How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Lando's Logic. It's actually been a while since we have done one of these, but just given how crazy of a season it's been, given how crazy of a scenario it feels like that we are in right now in Major 4, it feels like the perfect subject. It just feels like now is the time to actually talk about who's the best team in the game. Like, who do you actually give that title to? Is there a team that you would actually put up there? Like, if we're going based off of tiers, does anybody sit in the S tier? How many teams do you have really in the A tier? It's a very fun combo to have, and it feels like the name that is on the tip of everybody's tongue is Optic Texas. Do you give them the title of best team in the game? If not, what does it require for them to have that title leading in to Major number 4? And it was funny. Jay and I had a cast the other day between Atlanta and Toronto. And as I was preparing for that series, it was like, all I can really think about is the recency, which is a lot of negatives, right? Atlanta can't win hard points. Atlanta starting to get, caught up. They, went on that 3-game losing streak. It was the most losses in a row that Atlanta has had in franchise history. Toronto Ultra, they started off 0-3, and, their opening 2 series, they started off losing their first 2 games. All of this stuff. And they are our number 1 and number 2 seeded team. Like, it's wild. Like, these are the teams who have just won the recent majors, the team who sits at number 1, the team who sits at number 2, and all we can talk about is negatives. And so to me, it's so fun because the reason why we're talking about number 1 and number 2 bleeding is that it opens up so much of an opportunity for a team to slide in and possibly become the best team in the game to close out the year, which is really what you're looking for even when we get into champs talk. Because, right now when we talk about champs, we're really talking, at least on broadcast, about, teams 6 through 10. Who's going to champs? Who's not going to champs? What does it mean if you do? What does it mean if you don't? All of that stuff. But there's also an equally, if not more fun combo, I think, in our top 3, top 4, maybe even top 5, depending on how the next major goes. And it feels like we could be having a quick shift of the guard. And at this point in the season, historically, this is when you really, really look at who the best team is in the game, or really where are the pieces starting to fall on the board. Because ending of the season, hitting your peak at the right time is what it's all about when it comes down to champs. Who's going to hoist the trophy at the end of the year is all about peaking at the right time. And so it feels like there's a lot of fun combos that we can have right there. But the reason why I want to talk about Optic Texas, obviously, is because of the trajectory that they have been on, the interesting conversation of, do they hold that title now of being the best team in the game? Do they not? Who is it? All that stuff. But the one thing that we have to pinpoint is what a ride that has been for Optic Texas so far throughout this year. I mean, the fact that we're, like I said, midway toward the end, of our Major 4 qualifiers, and we're having this conversation already about Optic Texas is nothing short of impressive. Because really, at this point, last split, we were discussing, this may not be the right move. This could be a team that is going to take a while to rebuild. Maybe they should be focusing on next year. Oh, they didn't get pred, season's over type of deal. And yet here we are saying that they could actually be in a really good spot, not just to win the next major, but to maybe even be favorites to win champs. Like, that is a convo that probably currently exists in a lot of people's minds, and maybe something that we talk about and dive into further on. But the records, the recency for Optic Texas lately is fantastic. With GHOSTY, they are 11-4 in series. And I feel like we just keep adding fuel to the fire of this conversation, but they currently sit as the number 3 seed in the CDL. They just passed the LA Thieves for that not long ago. And the most interesting part that I actually saw someone post about on Twitter is that the number 1 and number 2 seed, Atlanta FaZe number 1, Toronto Ultra number 2, Optic has just, with this series victory over the Thieves, tied both Ultra and FaZe for overall season series record at 20-11. So all 3 of them match when we talk about this year when it comes down to overall series record. And obviously with Atlanta FaZe winning Major 2, Toronto winning Major 3, it absolutely helps their case to have more points. But we talk about specific series, Optic Texas has just tied them. It's interesting. And so why are we chatting about this? Like, why is this important? Why does this conversation even matter right now? We're in the middle of the Major 4 qualifiers. Like, why is this important? To me, the reason why this is important is because of what Optic Texas have been able to do in such a short turnaround. And also, like I said, because of how wide open Champs is this year, how wide open the season is with 3 events left. And these 3 events are going to come and go very fast. Like these are going to be very, very quick, especially when it comes down to the last 2 because they're back to back. And like I said, also because of the fact that we're talking about our top seeds in the game and we can't find something positive to say. We can't find a whole lot positive to say about Atlanta FaZe, about Toronto Ultra. I mean, the season so far for the Thieves hasn't been electric. What are we talking about? Seattle Surge? Like, who do you really go to from there? New York Subliners? I mean, what conversation are you going to have about some of these teams? Like I said, that is positive. Champs this year is completely wide open at this point in the season. And so this to me opens up a huge avenue if you are Optic Texas to walk in, possibly get the exact timing that you need to win a major or 2 or to win a few championships here. Now, the reason as for why Optic Texas is even involved in this conversation or maybe even in the midst of doing this is based off of their hardpoint. These are some wild, very, very wild and impressive numbers. They are currently 19-6 going back to the Major 3 qualifiers where GHOSTY was added to the team. They are 14-2 in their last 16 hard points. And during that 16-game stretch, they're beating teams by an average of 90 points. Beating teams by an average of 90 points. It's basically a hill and a half, if not 2 actual hills. And then so far throughout Major 4, they are 5-0, beating teams by an average of 105 points. Since Optic Texas has formed, going back again to the Major 3 qualifier conversation, in Hardpoint, taking every single team during this same stretch, Optic Texas is number 1 in Hardpoint win percentage. They are number 1 in plus minus, which is taking every single result, wins and losses, combining those together. What is Optic Texas winning by? They're winning by 50 points. Number 2 during this same stretch is 27 points. So they have basically doubled the team who just sits behind them during this stretch. Also, like I said, since the Major 3 qualifiers, Optic Texas is number 1 in win percentage, number 1 in plus minus. They are number 2 in breaks and number 3 in rotations. That's solid, right? At the end of the season, we're normally talking about how, teams are tightening up. You don't often get like this level of better in a mode like Hardpoint over a mode that everybody is scrimmaging. Now, the most important factor for me, because these Hardpoint records are fantastic, it's going to be a continuous conversation that we have. They look very good to keep up that Hardpoint winning streak moving into their next 2 matches versus the LA Gorillas and the Boston Breach. We'll see how intact that can remain, but it's still going to look phenomenal, even if they do have a shortcoming maybe in one of these series. But to me, the most important thing for Optic Texas, and really what you could hold against them when you do talk about best teams in the game, maybe favoring them for Major 4, for Major 5, for champs, the number one thing for me that I would say is a point of emphasis when it comes down to Texas is their map pool depth. If you really do look at the numbers, right, to me, Texas has got to work on the map pool. 12 out of their 19 wins since this team has formed in Hardpoint, 12 out of those 19 wins strictly come from 2 maps, that being Mercado and that being Fortress. On those 2 maps, they are a combined 12-0. So you get where a lot of the success is coming from, right? You can kind of tell based off the way that Mercado plays, based off the way that Fortress plays. I forget the exact other map records, but they're fine. It's like 3-2 and I think like 0-1 or something like that. But you can tell they have 2 very strong maps. You need at least a third, right? You need at least a third. One team bans out one. You could run into a situation where, let's say that you do lose a Fortress or a Mercado at some point, and then a team beats you in their choice. You run into an issue where you're losing Hardpoint. Another thing for Texas when it comes down to map pool is not just in Hardpoint, but it's also in Search Destroy. Since Major 3, when this team formed in Search Destroy, they are 7-5. However, 6 of those 7 wins that they have are on Fortress and Hotel. Again, 2 maps in S&D, 2 maps in Hardpoint. If they have got those in a set, they're going to smoke you. Otherwise, questions could start to arise a bit. And then in Control, started off with the new lineup 2-7. Since then, they are 5-1. Very impressive. They look good on both Hotel and Asilo lately. And then I know that they did just lose an Expo, I think, to the Thieves, but they did win an Expo in a prior series. So that is a big question. So like I said, moving forward, I do think that if you are Optic Texas, the number one priority to not just be good at Major 4, but to be good at Major 5, to be good at Champs, is to try to work on that map pool. And it is something that does hesitate me from wanting to maybe promote them earlier than maybe a lot of other people, just given the fact that we've seen a lot of teams at times be very good at certain maps, be good at certain game modes where maybe a map or two is really solid. Teams start to pick up on that, and then we start to see maybe more of the truths revealed about a particular roster. So depth to me is the number one point of emphasis right now if you're Optic Texas. So right now, do I give Optic Texas the title of being the best team in the game? Not just yet. No, not just yet. I think that right now, if we're talking from a tier perspective, I don't have them far and away above Toronto and Atlanta. I think right now I put them on that same tier. I think you can also argue about LA Thieves entering into that same tier. Obviously, Optic Texas being, further away from Thieves. When we talk about, the positioning of where teams would be, just given their recent victory over them. But like I said, I feel like for right now, to me, the way that I look at giving a roster or giving an organization the title of best team in the game, it has to be over a significant stretch. Like, we have to be able to pick out a portion of the season that says, hey, you know what? From this point to this point, they were the best team in the game. You can do that over the Major 4 qualifiers, and no one's going to argue with that, especially if they finish off 5-0 with the number 1 seed. To me, that's what needs to be done in order for them to hold on to that title. But I hesitate to be like, you know what? There were 3 games. There was 3 games when Optic beat New York and they beat Thieves, where they were the best team in the game. And then, maybe Optic, lost their last 2 matches, or maybe they looked good versus LAG, lost to Boston, and then they go into Major 4, they finish second. Like, that's not to me a significant stretch where it was like, no doubt about it, they were the best team in the game for that time period. To me, there needs to be a significant portion of the season where that can be considered. I almost, like I said, hesitate to say it's just the qualifiers, but given the conversations around Atlanta, given the very slow start for Toronto Ultra here in the Major 4 qualifiers, and the fact that Optic Texas just beat LA Thieves, who are probably the second most interesting team in the league, the second hottest team in the league, to me, this just sets up for Optic to currently hold on to that title. Like I said, I would not give it to them yet. Same tier for me as those other 3 rosters, but if they finish off 5-0, if they look great versus LAG, great versus Boston, they're going to have that number 1 seed moving into Major 4. That's when they get it. And I think it would be undoubted by the entire CDL, of course, if they go on to win Major 4, that they would be the number 1 undisputed best team in the game. So that's where I sit on that. Feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Where do you feel like Optic Texas is headed at this point in the year? Do you already consider them the best team in the game? If not, what is your criteria for them to hold on, or rather to earn that specific title? Love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments. Make sure to stay tuned tomorrow for Lando's lock-ins, which I'm excited to obviously put up here for you guys. It's going to be a blast. Talk about our final 10 games of the Major 4 qualifiers leading in to the Major 4 tournament, which should be great. But until then, I'll see you guys back on the channel very soon.